Alright, success. I got the fan shroud out. It's out of our way now. I'm still undecided on whether I'm going to try to do this without taking the radiator out. I'm a little bit concerned about accidentally leaning back up against it while I'm standing in here and crushing the radiator or damaging the fins. I don't know. I may just make a cardboard flap to go over it to protect it, but I haven't decided. I think I'll proceed and then try stand it down in there and see how it goes. So I may come back and take the radiator out completely. Anyway, my next step is going to be to remove the serpentine belt. To do that, we simply need to crank on the tensioner pulley here. It's got a 15mm nut on it, and you just crank like that and it relieves the tension from the serpentine belt, and then you can just remove the belt. Just be sure you remember how the belt goes back. There should be a diagram like this on the front of your frame, but just be sure that you're comfortable how it gets reinstalled so you can put it back on later. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it off, and then I'll probably pull the air box off next, and then we can go on to the alternator and AC. So moving along, I'll be back shortly. Alright, I'm ready to remove the air filter housing. To do that, you simply need to remove this, I believe it's a 5/16 nut back here on this ring clamp. That'll relieve the tension around that, and then you can just sort of wiggle this up and off. There's also a stud that it sits on right there, so you'll have to lift up and then you can kind of wiggle back and forth and pull it off. And in my case, the boot is sort of attached to it, it's taped to it, but it's actually a separate piece, so you can remove this on either end. Mine, I'm going to take it off in one piece, but anyway, that's the idea. So let me loosen this and then we'll pull it off. Okay, the air filter housing is loose now. I've sort of wiggled it loose from that stud, and I can pull it up and out of the way. That'll expose the throttle. And of course there's various connections here that I'll get to in a second. You just need to make sure you label all those or know exactly where they go back. I know what they are, but I'll probably still tape them and label them just so they don't get lost in here and have to search for them later, because you end up kind of pulling wires and hoses to the side, and it's just easier if they got a piece of tape on them or something to help them stand out later. So anyway, I'm going to focus on getting the alternator and AC out of the way now. So let me get my tools together and we'll get going on that. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is remove this idler pulley here so that I can get to a bolt that is behind it. Right there by my finger. That bolt holds the bracket. It's one of the mini bolts that holds the bracket that holds the alternator and AC, and I'm going to try to remove those together like I did last time and just swing the whole thing over to the side. So I'm going to pull this idler pulley off, and then we'll start removing the bolts that hold that bracket on, as well as there's a few connections. You got two wires going to your alternator. One connects here at the top right there. I've already disconnected them, got them loose. There's a little tab that you have to push down while you pull out. Same thing here. This goes to your coil. The wire runs back to the alternator. So I disconnected that off the bottom of the coil. I've got this labeled so I know where they go back. So let me get the idler pulley out of the way and we'll start pulling these bolts on the bracket. This, by the way, is a 9/16 socket on the idler pulley. Alright, let me get that out of the way. Alright, before I start pulling the bracket bolts loose, I also wanted to point out that there are a couple of connections on your AC. You've got one here, I believe is a pressure sensor. So I've labeled that, and you've got another one right here by the valve cover. And this has a safety tab on it. You have to pull that red tab out, and then you can disconnect the electrical connection. So make sure you undo those first, so that once you get the bolts out of the bracket, you can just pick the whole thing up and swing it over. You don't want to it's kind of heavy, so you don't want to get that loose and then realize you've got to fall back and with one hand try to disconnect all this stuff. So just be prepared for that. So I'm going to get those loose, and then I'll start pulling bolts, and I'll show you how the bracket will come loose. Alright, I'm just about ready to remove the alternator and AC. We've got all the bracket bolts loose, I believe. There's a fair amount. I'll try to show all of them to you. This bolt here is a 9/16, and it holds this bracket, which connects to the alternator here. This here, I believe, is a 1/2 inch. Goes to this bracket, it connects to the back of the AC. And then you come down here, there's a 9/16 bolt there, a 9/16 bolt here, a 9/16 bolt here that this is a bypass tube, has a clip that bolts through that. Let's see, there's a 9/16 bolt here right above the fan pulley. There's a 9/16 bolt here below the alternator, and another one down below that. And I believe that's it. You can see it's a little bit loose now. I need to finish taking all these out. Oh, I forgot one thing. There's a 1/2 inch bolt here that goes through this clip on the engine dipstick, the oil dipstick. So you'll have to remove that as well so that this can swing over. So let's see, let me count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 9/16 bolts, and then 1 and 2 1/2 inch. I believe that's it. So I'm going to finish taking those out, and I'll swing all of this over to the side and tie it up, and I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, I've got the alternator and AC and bracket partially removed, and realized that I forgot to disconnect the main coming from the back of the alternator. So that's a 1/2 inch nut. It's got this little safety cap that goes over it. You just squeeze these tabs here and that pulls off, and you undo that nut. Like that, and that wire will come loose. Now I should be able to swing everything off to the side. So don't forget that, like I did. Let me regroup and get this stuff moved out of the way, and then we'll move on. Okay, now that I've got the alternator and AC moved out of the way, you can see I just sort of spun them over to the passenger side. You know, the AC has flexible hoses. You just want to make sure you don't kink them. And just gently set it over to the side, and you can see I've got it sort of tied up with a couple of bungee cords. So that's going to keep it out of my way until I'm ready to put it back in later. So just wanted to show a quick shot of that. So let's move on now. I'll start taking some more stuff off the intake. Alright, I've got the alternator and AC out of the way now. I just wanted to point out that 2 of the 9/16 bolts that you remove are longer than the rest. This one here is the longest. Goes in that hole right there. And then on the other side, this bolt right here is longer than the rest of them. It'll be pretty obvious when you go to put things back that that's the case, but I just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to set these aside. If I can get this one back out. That's great, I dropped it on the floor. Anyway, now we can see the front of the manifold, and it's pretty obvious that my water outlet here has been leaking. I knew that. I've ordered a new one. I think this one just shot, and I'm wondering if that may have contributed to my manifold gasket failing again, just because you can see all the coolant that's sitting here, and that is part of the manifold gasket right there. So I'm wondering if the coolant is causing it to deteriorate, because it's pretty soft right there. So that might be the culprit. So I've been putting off replacing this water outlet, and it looks like that may have contributed to my gasket problem again. So I'm learning the hard way. But anyway, I guess what I'm going to do next is remove the water outlet There's a bolt on either side, and then I can remove this heater hose here. And I think this is a temperature sensor here. I can remove that, and then maybe we'll move up to the throttle and start disconnecting everything up there. So let me get going on that, and I'll be back shortly. Alright, so I'm standing in the engine bay now, kind of between the fan and the radiator. And I ended up leaving the radiator for now. I've got some cardboard over it. It's just a tight squeeze. It'll give me more room if I pulled it, but in the essence of time, I think I'll leave it. So I'm ready to remove the throttle from the intake. There are several connections here we need to undo first. You've got an electrical connection here that has a tab you just have to push down on with your thumb and then pull out. I've got it loose already, so that comes off. Same thing here, same type of connection. Notice this one's black, this one's white. I've got them labeled with a lettering system. You can do whatever system works best for you. Back here is the intake air control connection. It's got a clip on the back that you have to pull out and then undo like that. So you pull up on that tab and then pull out. And then over here we've got cables going to the throttle and transmission. This is the TV cable. This goes to the transmission and pretty much tells it when to shift. It tells it what position the throttle's in. Again, it's a TV cable. I think it stands for throttle valve. But anyway, it's got, I've already disconnected it, but it's got sort of a slot. See if I can get this to focus. Yeah, there you go. That hooks over this little stud there. So to push it in, to connect it, you just push it in. To undo it, you push this way and it'll click out of place and you can remove it and just let it hang. Same thing with these cables. Notice that at least on my truck, the little grommets here are a different color. So when you go to put it back, the green goes on the outside. It connects there and it loops under this little saddle here like that, and then connects on that, connects on that stud there. TV cable goes there, that cable, the throttle cable goes here, and there's another cable here that connects on that stud on the inside, and they're all the same way. To disconnect them, you just push them away and they'll unclick from their seat. So now that I have all that, oh, and then I forgot this vacuum connection here. Excuse me. That just pulls off that nipple right there. Once you have all that disconnected, you're ready to pull the throttle off. And I believe these are 1/2-inch bolts to hold it on. So just need to undo those, and then we're ready to move on. Let me just check that size. Here's a 1/2-inch. Yeah, 1/2-inch. So let me pull those 4 bolts off, and we'll remove the throttle. And then I'm going to show you down what the inside of my intake looks like right now, and that's a surefire indicator when you have a intake leak or a plenum leak. You'll see a bunch of oil down inside the intake like I have right now. So let me pull off the throttle and then I'll show that to you. Okay, I got the throttle loose, and then I realized that this vacuum line here that connects to the side of the intake is harnessed with one of these cables here that connects to the throttle. So I'm going to need to just undo all of these at the same time. And then that'll allow me to kind of pull the throttle out of the way and get it out of here. So anyway, that's loose. I'll get it out of my way, and then we can look down inside the intake, see what it looks like. Okay, real quickly, I wanted to point out that there's 3 5/16 bolts, 1, 2, and 3 that hold the throttle to the throttle bracket. I'm going to go ahead and take those out, and that will allow me to just separate the throttle so that I can clean it later, and just make it a lot easier to get everything out of the way here. So let me finish undoing these and get this out of the way, and then I can show you down inside the intake.